12. These were the priests and Levites who returned to Zebulun son of Shumphet and with Jews, Sarah, James, Ezra, Amriah, Malchus, Hatras, Shemar, Rahum, Marta, Edo, Gedres, Gideotis, Abisus, Misam, Moabit, Shemes, Joas, Zedebias, Shalom, Amok, Hilkai, and Jedi. These were the leaders of the priests and their associates in the days of Joshua. The Levites were Joshua, in Binias, Cadmo, Shemir, Judah, and also Matronus, who together with his associates was in charge of the songs of thanksgiving. Bacchus and Uni, their associates, stood opposite them in the service. Joshua was the father of Joachim the father of Elisab, Elisab the father of Joiada, Joiada the father of Jonathan, Jonathan the father of Jadu. In the days of Joachim, these were the heads of the priestly family, a serious family, Mirai, of Jeremiah Hani, of Esdras, Marsham, the Esdras Joni, the Malchus Jonathan, Shemith Joseph, of Hiram Adna, of Mermatis Helkai, of Edos Jacri, of Gileotis Mershams, of Abisa Jacri, of Mimas and the Moadias, of Pilate, of Gibai Shami, of Shimei the Jonathan, of Jerban the Matin, of Jerban's Uzi, of Shalus the Kalai, of Amos the Aber, of Hikas the Hashbron, of Jadis the Nato, the family house of the Levites in the days of Elisab, Joiada, Jonathan, and Jada, as well as those of the priests, were recorded in the region of Jairus in the prison. The families had among the descendants of Levi up to the time of Johannes, son of Elisab, were recorded in the book of the Annals, and the leaders of the Levites were Hesper, Shemus, Joseph, son of Cadmus, and their associates, who stood opposite them to give praise and thanksgiving, one section responding to the other, as prescribed by David, the man of God. Matana, Bacchus, Obadiah, Melsham, and Talmon, and Akub were gatekeepers and guarded the storerooms at the gates. They served in the days of Joachim, son of Joshua, the son of Zadok, and in the days of Nama the governor and Ezra the priest and scribe. At the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, the Levites were sought out from where they lived and were brought to Jerusalem to celebrate joyfully and dedication with songs of thanksgiving and with the music of cymbals, harps, and lyres. The singers also were brought together from the region around Jerusalem, from the villages of Naphtali, from the Beth Gilgal, from the areas of Geba and Asmon. The singers had built villages for themselves around Jerusalem. When the priests and the Levites had purified themselves ceremonially, they purified the people, the gate, and the walls. I had the leader of Judah go up and top of the wall. I also assigned 2 large chores to give thanks. One was to proceed on the top of the wall to the right toward the dog gate. Hoshea, the half of the leaders of Judah, followed them, along with Ezra, Marsham, Judah, Benjamin, Shemaiah, Jewis, as well as some priests with trumpets, and also Jacob, son of Jonathan, the son of Shemiah, the son of Matto, the son of Mikai, the son of Jacquer, the son of Aspa, and his associate Shemaiah, Ezra, Melech, Gilai, Neptune, Judah, and Hani, with the musical instruments prescribed by David, the man of God. Ezra the scribe led the procession. At the foundation gate, they continued directly up the steps of the city of David on the ascent to the wall and passed above the house of David to the water gate on the east. The second chore proceeded in the opposite direction. I followed them on top of the wall, together with half of the people, past the tower of ovens of the broad wall, over the gate of Ephraim, the Jersey gate, the Bish gate, the tower of Hanil, and the tower of Hundreds, as far as the sheep gate. At the gate of the guard they stopped. Then the 2 chores that gave thanks took their place in the house of God. So I, together with the help of the officers as well as the priest, acclaimed Martha, Minia, Mikai, Elamana, Jacquees, and Hania with their trumpets, and also Manasseh, Sherman, Isodor, Uzi, Shuritan, and Malki, Elam, and Esther. The chorus sang under the direction of Jerka on that day they offered the great sacrifices, rejoicing because God had given them great joy. The women and children also rejoiced. The sound of rejoicing in Jerusalem could be heard far away. At that time, men were appointed to be in charge of the storerooms for the contributions, vespers, and entities. From the fields around the town, they were to bring into the storerooms the portion required by the law for the priests and the Levites, for Judah was pleased with the ministering priests and Levites. We performed the service of their God and the service of purification, as did also the singers and the gatekeepers, according to the commands of David and his son Solomon. For long ago, in the days of David and Asaph, there had been directors for the singers and for the songs of praise and thanksgiving to God. So in the days of Jerah and the nuptials, all Israel contributed the daily proportion for the singers and gatekeepers. They also set aside the portion for the other Levites, and the Levites set aside the portion for the descendants of Aaron. 13. On that day, the book of Moses was read aloud in the hearing of the people, and there it was found written that no Amorites or Moabites should ever be admitted into the assembly of God, because they had not met the Israelites with food and water, but had hired Balaam to call a curse down on them. Our God, however, turned the curse into a blessing. When the people heard this law, they excluded from Israel all who were virgin descent. Before this, Elizabeth the priest had been put in charge of the storerooms of the house of our God. He was closely associated with the cherubim that had provided him with a large room formerly used to store the grain offerings and incense and temple articles, and also the cities of grain. New wine and oil prescribed for the Levites, singers, and gatekeepers, as well as the contributions for the priest. But while all this was going on, I was not in Jerusalem, for in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes, king of Babylon, I had returned to the king. Some time later, I asked his permission and came back to Jerusalem. Here I learned about the evil thing Elizabeth had done in providing Tobias a room in the court of the house of God. I was greatly displeased and drew all Tobias' household goods out of the rooms. I gave orders to provide the rooms, and then I put back into them the equipment of the house of God. With the grain offering and incense, I also learned that the portion assigned to the Levites had not been given to them, and that all the Levites and the singers responsible for the service had gone back to their own fields. So I rebuked the officers and asked them, "Why is the house of God neglected?" Then I called them together and stationed them at their post. All Judah brought the cities of grain, new wine, and oil into the storerooms. I put Shemaiah the priest, Zadok the scribe, and the Levitites named Peter the charge of the storerooms, and I made Hanam son of Hekra and the son of Metur the assistants. Because these men were considered trustworthy, they were made responsible for distributing the supplies to their brothers. Remember me for this, O my God, and do not blot out what I have so faithfully done for the house of our God and its service. In those days I saw men in Judah trading wine presses on the Sabbath and bringing the grain loading in one donkey, together with wine, grapes, figs, and all the other kinds of those. All these were bringing all this into Jerusalem on the Sabbath. Therefore I warned them against selling food on that day. Men from Tyre who lived in Jerusalem were bringing in fish and all kinds of merchandise and selling them in Jerusalem on the Sabbath to the people of Judah. I rebuked the nobles of Judah and said to them, "What is the wicked thing you are doing, desecrating the Sabbath day? Didn't your forefathers do the same things, so that our God brought all this calamity upon us and upon this city? Now you are stirring up more wrath against Israel by desecrating the Sabbath." When evening shadows fell on the gate of Jerusalem before the Sabbath, I ordered the door to be shut and not open until the Sabbath was over. I stationed some of my own men at the gates so that no load could be brought into the one on the Sabbath day. Once or twice the merchants and sellers of all kinds of goods spent the night outside Jerusalem. But I warned them and said, "Why do you spend the night by the wall? If you do this again, I will lay hands on you." From that time on, they no longer came to the Sabbath properly. I command the Levites to purify themselves and go and guard the gates in order to keep the Sabbath day holy. Remember me for this also, O my God, and show mercy to me according to your great love. Moreover, in those days I saw men of Judah who was married from a woman to Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. Half of their children spoke the language of Ashdod or the language of one of the other people, and did not know how to speak the language of Judah. I rebuked them and called a curse down on them. I beat some of the men and pulled out their hair. I made them take an oath to the God's name and said, You are not to give your daughters in marriage to their sons, nor are you to take their daughters in marriage for your sons or for yourselves. Was it not because the marriages like these that Solomon king of Israel sinned? Among the many nations there was no king like him. He was loved by all his God, and God made him king over all Israel. But even he was led into sin by virgin women. Was we here now to you to all are doing all the terrible wickedness and are being unfaithful to our God by marrying virgin women? One of the sons of Joiada, son of Elizabeth the high priest, was a son-in-law of Sabbath of Hornet, and I drove him away from me. Remember them, O my God, because they defiled the priestly office and the convenience of the priesthood and of the Levites. So I provided the priest and the Levites to everything foreigners, and assigned them duties, each to his own task. I also made provision for contributions of wood at designated times, and for the first fruits. Remember me with a favor, O my God.